Good morning, listeners all over the world. My name is Musa Ali, and I'm together as the host of this maiden edition of Quara Time podcast with Honorable Fati Diko. And today, for today's edition, we have no other than a big fish in the house, yes, a distinguished senator, an astute medical practitioner who has contributed immensely to the public health sector in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to welcome distinguished Senator Ibrahim Yaya Nurewe. You are most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Welcome, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So first of all, sir, based on what Nigerians has known, we want to welcome you and we want to congratulate you on your new office as the chairman of National Health Insurance Authority. It has been a wonderful office, and we believe with your achievements in the Senate last time, you are still going to make a lot of landmark achievements as far as the issue of Nigerian Health Insurance Authority is concerned, particularly in addressing the issue of out-of-pocket spending in the health sector. Thank you very much. You are once again welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So, sir, to the question of the day, we want to ask you and hear from you, sir, just like our listeners, your take on the current state of Nigerian economy. As a distinguished senator and a former House of Assembly member, and of course, a passionate public health expert, what do you think? What is your take about Nigerian state of Nigeria's economy now?
Thank you. Well, we could say that the Nigerian economy is in transition. That's what you might take. I say transition because in the last previous government, twice the economy went into recession. And to be able to get out of this recession, several interventions were undertaken, including sourcing for money from outside within the country, that is by taking loan to be able to fund the government budget. Also, several interventions were put in place to support various stimulus packages by the government. But in doing this, while we came out of recession, the country went into some other problems, including the challenges of heavy debts, that is, we had heavy loans. And one of the key identifier that makes the economy not to be able to grow or for the government to have to continue to borrow was the issue of subsidy on certain key essential items, including fuel. Because as we know in Nigeria, the petroleum as a source of energy is a major consumption and determining factor for quite a number of activities. So, as before the 2023 election, all major president candidates saw it to say that when they get on board, they have to address the issue of the subsidy. And I was a member of the last Senate. I'm aware that in the 2024 budget, which was the last budget we passed in 2023, the provision for subsidy was only for 6 months. That's between January and June. And it means it is left to the incoming government in May to decide as to what will be done with the other subsidy. And I think it's given this particular scenario that made the current President Bola Tinubu to, on day one, remove subsidy. Of course, it's like a vehicle moving and you suddenly just put a brake, or a vehicle that is static and you suddenly remove the shock that was put or whatever is put to stop it to go. So the sudden removal of the subsidy without commensurate pre-actions or actions that will be taken to be able to mitigate the effect was a shock. It's what I want to call a shock. I would say, in my own opinion, it's a shock therapy to this country. So as such, we had very high inflation in terms of increased cost of things. Related to that also was the issue of getting appropriate pricing for currency vis-a-vis the benchmark currency of US dollar, which is the currency we use for our foreign or external trading. In the several years before now, it's been fluctuating, but there has always been intervention by the CBN to be able to safeguard the exchange rate. So that action also was taken by government within the first few months to say that the currency will be floated. So to make it short, these two actions had great negative effect on the economy, particularly on the living standard of people. We must have to face the reality. Living standard was dive because cost of living increase, including the cost of basic essential things like food, clothing, even shelter, even the hospital. I mean, that's cost of drugs. And of course, the government did not just follow the SAM and not do anything. Quite a number of interventions were done, including various palliatives that were introduced both at the federal, state, and local government, including some other economic stimulus package and intervention. But I must say, most of these things are still ongoing. Now, for example, I said ongoing, and that's why I said at the beginning that we are in transition. The subsidy, as we see it, when it was removed initially, petrol went as far as 1,002, 1,004, but it's now come down to between 9 and 1,000 naira. In which case, we are getting to a price that may be stable and that we'll get used to. So the fluctuation itself has a lot of negative effect because it means planning will be very difficult. But it's not only that, because prices of things have gone up, the price has started to come down, but it's still not stabilized yet. It's still not yet available. Two, one of the key interventions of government was to increase the salary of workers. This drives a lot of things in the economy. But the effect of the salary increase is not being seen yet, because salary increase was effected last year. As at that time, of course, the naira exchange was higher than what it is now. The cost of fuel was also high, but now it's coming down. Then, not every government at all levels will start paying. So it is for all this that that's why I said we are in transition. But being in transition, it means we are coming from a position where it was very bad to getting to stable situation before it now growth. We are yet to get to the situation of growth. So I think somebody doesn't have to say about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. This, sir.
Very lovely one, yes. The second question we will ask you, sir, is as a former senator who has contributed landmark laws in Nigeria, can you give us your thoughts on the implementation of these laws? How will this be beneficial to a common man on the street, like the vulnerables? How will all these laws, like the mental law, the other laws you were part of, how will this be?
Thank you very much.
Yes,
I think I'm pleased to say that I had the privilege and we were able to enact some landmark laws.
yes, sir.
We mentioned two of them, the Mental Health Act and the National Health Insurance Authority Act. Now, the implementation.
I would love you to talk on that third law too.
The first one is we have the Federal College of Computer Alternative Medicine,
Yes,
and then
we're
we have a
talking of
psychiatric hospital, which
Yes,
is
thank you, sir.
the establishment of with the level of the Federal Psychiatric Group.
Yes.
Well, if I want to start with the implementation has been very well on way.
Very
So
well,
that one is
yes.
an establishment act that enables us to be able to set up the neuropsychiatric hospital,
Yes, sir.
the first of its kind in the North Central Political Zone, and particularly Kwara as a member is the host. For that one, I think the implementation is very much of course, because as at the time, even before I left, we'll be able to give effect to the intent of the law by the establishment of the hospital, by the appointment of a substantive. Then it was initially an acting medical director,
Yes, sir.
and then substantive. And because the acting, unlike what happened in many situations like that, where the Federal Ministry of Health just posts the director, we were able to get the Federal Ministry to appoint the seasoned professor of psychiatry, who was later confirmed. And the then president was gracious enough to release the take-off grant for the hospitals, and then we were able to put money in the 2023 and 2024 budgets, which helped the hospital to be able to at least have his foot on that to establish some foundation. That's for that one.
Yes, sir.
But the other laws, the Mental Health Act particularly, the key 2-3 things that were in that act, which are yet to be implemented, unfortunately, are the establishment of the Department of mental health in the Federal Ministry of Health.
Yes.
That department is supposed to be in charge of policy, the implementation, advocacy, and coordination of mental health activities across the country.
Okay.
I'm sad to say that as of now, that has not been effective. And it's very unfortunate because everybody that's a public officer, when you are elected, before you take office or you are appointed, you swear to uphold and implement the constitution and the law. So there has been a lot of advocacy by various stakeholders to get the ministry to do this. So the other one thing regarding that law is about decriminalizing suicide, decriminalizing some kind of other mental health disorders. Because as we know in this country, there's stigma and criminalization. Particularly stigma, when people that have mental disorders, the ones that are obvious like schizophrenia, people will think, oh, they are either it is because of what they do, or it's because of one person doing something against them because of lack of knowledge. So, and then their fundamental right is affected. So, but the ministry has been taking effect on this. I think they set up a committee to be able to give effect to that. The other aspect is specifically that law also adding it, what we call a fund to be set aside by the federal government to fund the activities of that department in terms of making mental health accessible, affordable, and being of quality. This has not been effective also. I think it took 4 years before the nation started to be able to establish the basic healthcare provision fund. It was only in 2018. And then in 2018-2019, the fund that was put in it were under the service-wide vote, which is discretionary, and were released. But when I had the opportunity of being in the Senate, having had experience of being part of that law, I was able to move the basic healthcare provision fund from being discretionary, that is to become statutory, to become first line time. And since 2020 budget up to now, it has been like that, in which case once the budget is allocated, which is calculated 1% of the federal government consolidated revenue fund, it is released every quarter. And that's why basic healthcare provision fund is working now. It is my hope that the Mental Health Act will also get that before the infusion of the current government. On the National Health Insurance Authority Act, some element of Nigeria has started. For example, when this government came here and they appointed the DG, in the past, it was executive secretary with the president normally just appoint, but we put it there to be a director general to be approved by the Senate on the basis of the fact that we wanted a legislative contribution to the appointment of the head of such an important agency. Because the agency is an agency that has activities across the 36 states and FCT. So that was effected in the last appointment. But the critical element of that law, which is the mandatory health insurance, is yet to be fully implemented. Some element of activities are starting, but it's not yet started because what's the law, in fact, the title of the short title of the law is Mandatory Health Insurance Act. That's what is said. Although the long title is the Establishment Function of National Health Insurance for Universal Health Coverage. But we cannot achieve universal health coverage without expanding access, the financial access to health. So this is still a work that is starting now. We say work in progress, but the progress is very, very slow.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, distinguished, for these fantastic answers that you've given us. Please, sir, I still need your take on the current state of Nigerian health system. Going by what Nigeria as a country has been faced in terms of JAPA syndrome. Not only JAPA at the level of human capital, but even at the level of resources needed for the healthcare. Most of the drugs coming to the country today are coming from Asia countries of China and India. So as a distinguished former lawmaker and of course the chairman of a powerful agency, NHIA, and of course a former senator, please, what is your take about this? How can Nigeria as a country address this? Minding you that we have over 200 million people. And one critical thing for these 200 million people is that health security is sacrosanct. We cannot do away with it. So, sir, what is your take about that?
Well, I think you put several issues in one. Let me try and unpack one by one. Well, of course, generally, anybody within the health sector space in Nigeria will definitely say we are not satisfied with the situation of the health sector. Now, you've mentioned about 3 or 4 critical elements of what we call the pillars of health system. You mentioned the issue of human resources,
Mm.
you mentioned the issue of drugs and supply, you mentioned the issue of financial accessibility, and then, of course, quality of service. On each of these 4, we have a lot of challenges. But what I want to say is that I'm very much aware that the current president, under his renewed hope agenda, the health sector renewed hope agenda, which I have the privilege of being part of those that put what the policy